So let's see what lateralization means. Lateralization, the definition of it is the specialization of the function of the two hemispheres. So what we're going to be talking about here is we're going to be talking about right brain and left brain. And a lot of people take the notion of right brain and left brain to an extreme. They'll say, oh, I can't do math very well because I'm a right brain individual. Or, oh, I have no imagination because I'm a left brain individual. But when you think about it, let's just look at the hand. So yes, we would agree that a lot of us, our right hand is specialized for writing, and about 10% of you, your left hand is specialized for writing. But when you think about it, you need both hands to do most things. So we're going to find out is that the left brain is more specialized for certain processing of information, and the right brain is more specialized for other processing of the information, but it's really rare when you're not combining the two. So let's just take a look at this. So what we have is we have the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. So the left hemisphere would be the left side of the brain. It's for language. So I'm sure you guys probably have to stop and start these lectures over and over again because probably well, I know it's really, really hard for you to pay attention to these lectures because you don't even have the facial patterning to look at. You don't have anything to look at except for a blank screen. It's really, really hard because what happens is your left hemisphere is stimulated by the language. It kind of wants to listen, but the right hemisphere doesn't really have much to occupy it. In my classes, I tell them a lot, there's only certain times when I can get their attention. And one way that I can get their attention is when I say, this will be on the test. They all start to pay attention and write madly. But then there's another time when I can usually get their attention. And even if I say, hey, I don't want you to listen to me, just tune out, think about something else. If I'm any good at this at all, they're going to pay attention. Can you think of when my students will pay attention in my classes? They usually pay attention to my stories. And in fact, a lot of them will say, you know, Amy, because a lot of them have to take me for Psych 1 and then they have to take me for Psych 2. So I see them again and again because I tend to teach in the mornings. So if they're a morning student, then they're kind of stuck with me. So they'll come back to me in Psych 2 from Psych 1 and they'll say, you know, Amy, I don't remember much of anything from your class, but I remember your stories. And I say, okay, well, that's good. At least you remember something. So with the left hemisphere is more for language, but what we're going to find out is we're going to find out the right hemisphere is for storytelling. And so when I tell a story, both sides of the hemispheres are a little bit happy, but when we're teaching in class, it's so easy to just go off on an imagination tangent, right? You're in class and the teacher's just working with all left hemisphere stuff, and so then your brain wants to go on its own kind of tangent. We're going to find out that certain speakers are going to engage your attention more, and it may have something to do with these hemispheric differences in processing. Hey, but I want you to think about this. So there's an activity. Well, no, let's just move on. We'll come back to this, okay? So another thing is logic, okay? So the left hemisphere is much more logical. It likes this plus this plus this equals this, and this plus this plus this plus this equals this, okay? So, of course, speech. Left hemisphere is much more involved in speech. So the second portion of chapter 14 is talking about speech, and so we're going to find out that both Broca's area and Wernicke's area, which are the speech centers in your brain, are located more heavily in the left hemisphere. We're even going to find out that the left hemisphere is a different size than the right hemisphere. If you take the brain and stick it on the table, you're going to probably see that in most people, the left side of the brain is going to be bigger than the right side, and that has to do with all the language processing that's right there. Okay, the left hemisphere is also for reading. That makes sense. Writing. I forgot to put arithmetic, but I'd like you to put math right here. So it's for math. And it likes to see things. The left hemisphere is kind of what I say. It's more like the kind of anal, more I do things this way, very sequentially. Now let's contrast that with the right hemisphere. So I told you already, the right hemisphere is for your imagination, and this could explain why it's so hard to pay attention to these online lectures, because all I'm doing is you're listening to all this language. What about the right hemisphere? You're not even getting a visual presentation, nothing. So it's hard. You have to stop, start, but you have to contrast that with you never have to come into class. It's very convenient for you. You can take the class wherever it's, whenever it's convenient for you. Okay. Another thing is I want you to think of this activity that if you have a pencil there, what activity do you tend to doodle on a lot? What activity do you do every day that you start doodling? You know, doodling means like just drawing little pictures. Okay. It would be talking on the phone. Think about it. If I have a pencil there and you're talking on the phone, don't you automatically pick up the pencil and start drawing? Probably you have to do that a lot with these online lectures because, see, when you're on the phone, you don't have anything but language to listen to. See, in class, you can go off on your imagination tangents, and the teacher probably won't know because you look like you're paying attention. But on the phone, you can get busted really easy because somebody say, "Did you hear what I said?" And you say, no, I didn't, no. And so we'll see that the right hemisphere is also for art. So let's go back to the spatial awareness thing though. So when you're presented with just language, speech, reading, writing, you might find yourself in class doodling. And actually, a teacher shouldn't take doodling as like disrespect because actually the doodling helps to keep the right hemisphere occupied so you can kind of pay attention with the left because it's kind of making it happy. Now, another reason why these lectures right here are so hard to listen to is because you don't have any movement. At LACC where I teach is I actually teach in this room where there's a big PowerPoint. It's a big multimedia room, so I have this cool smart board behind me that I can doodle on, and I have 2 screens on each side with the 2 projectors. But then sometimes I get relegated down to this area downstairs, which I call the basement, and I can't get any multimedia to work. I mean, I could do PowerPoint presentations, but it's hard to lug everything down there. So basically, I have to go back to just teaching the old school way. No electronics, no web, no nothing. But sometimes I think I'm a little bit of a better teacher downstairs. And the reason is when I'm in the multimedia room, I just stand right at the front of the desk and and I have to click the slides for the PowerPoint, and I don't do as much movement, as much drama. But when I'm downstairs and all I have is a chalkboard, I have to do lots of drama. I have to do lots of moving around to write this, to write this, to do this, to do that. And so this tends to keep them a little bit more awake. When you have a speaker up front just clicking a PowerPoint presentation, the speaker isn't moving. See, the speakers who are going to hold your attention very well are the ones that can stimulate both hemispheres. So you'll see that the ones that you pay a lot of attention to, their face moves a lot. Think about, could you watch Jim Carrey a lot? Probably you could watch him a lot because his face is constantly changing. Look at this. Oh wait, creativity, geometry. There it is, facial recognition. So the more we like people's faces change, whose faces change a lot. So someone who has a very expressive face, and they move a lot, like they have the big movements with their arms, like think of the big preachers and they say, "And God wants you to do this," and they raise their arms and say, "Woo, can I get an amen?" Okay, then this would trigger your right hemisphere and keep you more engaged. Okay, so now we're starting to understand, what is charisma. Another thing is how can you listen to comics a lot is comedy will keep you engaged, and it's all language. But what you'll see is that they go switch, 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 switch. So they'll say a joke and they'll say, well, da 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 da, and then all of a sudden they'll go to a totally different topic, da 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 da, and then they'll switch to another topic, and then they'll switch to another topic. So in order to keep the left and right hemisphere engaged, like in a comic routine, you kind of either have to tell stories, you have to invoke the imagination, and you have to switch topic areas constantly. Switch, 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 switch. That will keep both hemispheres engaged. So this might be interesting for some of you, is like a good speaker probably has the following elements. They move a lot, they engage your imagination, they change their facial patterning, because that keeps both sides of the hemispheres engaged. Okay. Another thing is the right hemisphere is for creativity. Now, have you guys ever experienced this? Like maybe some of you are decent at math. Some of you hate math, right? But some of you are good at math and you take pride in it. I'm pretty good at math. And then they stick you in a geometry class and you're just like, what? Or a trigonometry class, you're like, what? What would I was so good at math, but now I can't, because we think of geometry as math. But geometry is much more of a right hemisphere activity than regular math. The regular math is more of a left hemisphere activity. Okay. So one last thing here is the right hemisphere tends to look at the whole picture rather than looking at the different parts of the picture. So the left hemisphere looks at this piece plus this piece is this piece, whereas the right hemisphere wants to look at the whole picture. Okay, we're going to be in the next module. You know how I'm trying to cut these up so they're not as long, because I know it's hard for you guys to pay attention. So we're going to be looking at the corpus callosum and how the eyes are set up with regard to the two hemispheres. But before I go on to the corpus callosum and what happens if people are born without a corpus callosum and so on and so forth, is I want to talk about another really interesting thing about the right and left hemispheres. So to me, this is a very interesting slide, and it explains a lot, like, you know, why is someone a good speaker? Why do I doodle when I'm on the phone? Why do I daydream in class and I can't pay attention? So on and so forth. But now check this out. So this is another cool one with regard to psychology. So one side of the brain is more responsible for positive emotions, and the other side of the brain is more responsible for negative emotions. In fact, if you get a stroke, remember that from last chapter? If you get a stroke in one side of the brain, you're more likely to go into depression. And if you get a stroke in the other side of the brain, you're more likely to go into like a manic state, which is a very blissful, happy, almost too much. That's, you know, manic depressive disorder. Okay, so I'm going to let you think before I click it. But which do you think is which? Is left positive and right negative? Or is right positive and left negative? Okay, did you make your guess? Let's see. The left side of the brain is more for positive emotions, and the right side of the brain is more for negative emotions. So I'm going to let you write that down. But then I'm going to go back to the other slide that we had before, and we're going to look at some really interesting things that go along with this. Okay, so left is positive, right is negative. Now, check this out. Well, here, let's just see if we can do this. Okay, we'll put a left here. Oh, wait, you already have left, so we want positive. All right, sorry. Okay. And then this one here would be more for negative. Let's look at why this is fascinating in a psychology course. Okay. All right. What do psychologists always want you to do? What is psychology about a lot of times? What is therapy? Therapy is talking about your problems. When you just think about your problems and let them fester, 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 imagine the worst, keep thinking about all the bad things. It continues with the right hemisphere activity. But by forcing you to talk about the feelings, you're triggering the left side of the brain. Now, it's my understanding that Abraham Lincoln got himself into trouble a couple times because he would just spit out when he was mad and make kind of mistakes and piss people off. But then as he got older, I think a lot of you know that Abraham Lincoln went through some really negative times, suffered from depression, And he had to learn a lot of great life lessons. And so later on in life, his way of handling his negative feelings was, what I understand is he says, I would write all my feelings down, everything that I wanted to say on a piece of paper. Then I would crumple it up and throw it in the fire. And then I would write it down again. And then after that was done, I'd crumple it up into the fire. It seemed as the more times that I wrote it down, the better and more positive my presentation and mood would get. So that's another thing is maybe writing our negative feelings could be, stimulated here by, you have these negative feelings, but now you write it down and it makes us feel better. Also, here's another thing is, do you ever find that like some of your most creative times, like some of you that are poets or artists, have been when you're really depressed? I have a lot of students ask me this and they say, Amy, is this why, there's so many artists that are so depressed because their right hemisphere is, processing the negative emotions, but that's also involved in creativity, imagination, and art? I don't know the truth on that. I don't know if more people who are depressed are artists. I know we do see that tendency that, in the news and things, but I'm not sure if that's actually correct. But here, the negative emotions, by thinking about it, thinking about the worst, making it really bad, that is going to trigger more of your negative emotions. I know that this probably goes against what a lot of you think about psychology, and psychology would say, oh, introspection, let's see where your feelings are coming from. But more and more research is revealing that a good way of dealing with depression is sometimes to just don't think about it. Just, okay, things look bad, let's go out and exercise, let's focus on something else, let's not focus on all the negativity. So I thought that this is something. Also reading some really positive books, sometimes I'm not supporting this book as far as biological psychology or anything like that, but sometimes those books that are called The Power, where they're telling you just you can have whatever you want, or you can heal your life, or you can be what you want to be, or The Secret. Sometimes by reading these uplifting books, they can really help you pull out of your depression. So I just wanted to talk about that as some interesting behaviors, why talking about your feelings, why writing about your feelings, why reading some positive books might help, get rid of the depression. And in fact, with depressed people, what they want to do is they want to isolate. They don't want to be around anybody. And this is probably why it's definitely not a good thing. Okay. Okay, here's just some pictures that I put in here just to stimulate your right brain. Some interesting ones. I thought this one was kind of interesting, where they were saying, yes, I love you, great things, hi, this song is for you, no, not right. So if you looked at this picture after me giving you that lecture, which side would be the left side and which would be the right side? Because it's not really clear of which would be which. Have you decided? So I would say that this side right here would be the right side of the brain, and this side right here would be the left side of the brain. So this person would be facing you, okay? Because this would be the left side. See how it's a little bit more positive? And then this one would be the right side. It's more negative. And then here, I thought that this was a nice rendition. But see, I wanted to bring this up because, see, a lot of people, doesn't this look like a happy side of the brain? The right side of the brain, and you would understand that this one would be more the left side of the brain because they're all in cubicles, they do things very orderly, they're very analytical, whereas here it's like, oh, we're looking at all the beauty and so on and so forth. But now that you've taken Psych 2, you know that, oh, wait a second, the right hemisphere is actually for some pretty negative stuff, processing negative emotions, and the left hemisphere, oh, that's one more thing I wanted to go back to, I'm sorry about this, is you see this logic here? The only type of therapy that really seems to work for the depression is what they call cognitive behavioral therapy. And cognitive therapy, what it does is it has you apply logic to your feelings. Like when you say, "Oh no, so and so broke up with me. I'll never be happy again." Oh, really? Would it be possible for you to find another person to where you could be happy with again? Oh, no, no, no. I could never find someone like him. But aren't there many, many men or women in this world? Could there possibly be another person out there? You know, and you say, no, it can't. And oh, so are you telling me that all happiness has to come from being with one person? Are there other things in your life that make you happy? Well, maybe. And so what cognitive behavioral therapy does is it tries to get them to apply logic to these grand, see, look, the whole picture. Oh my gosh, my life is ruined because I didn't do well in this class. Oh, did it really? Is your life really ruined because you didn't do well in this class? Yes, because now that I didn't do well in this class, I can't um, that's going to affect my grade point average, and then I can't go to the college that I want to go to. And if I don't go to the college that I want to go to, then I can't get the job that I want. And if I don't get the job that I want, then there's no other job for me. Do you see how it's this big, holistic, grand picture? And it says, okay, so you didn't do well in this class. Could you retake the class? Well, yes. And how much is one class going to affect your grade point average? And is it absolutely necessary that you go to this college? Could there be another college where you could be just as happy? Is there a broad range of jobs that possibly you could be happy in? So anyway, there's just some